Hello, it's Barry.
Hey, it's Nate.
It's Brian.
Welcome back to the Collecti-Bros podcast. A podcast for collectors, players, gamers, bros, all hanging out, playing games, seeing if they're worth their prices. Today it's going to be an Is It Worth It episode. Fire Emblem, Path of Radiance on the GameCube is our game today. We all played it. Nate's first Fire Emblem.
Yes.
Brian's second.
My first 3D Fire Emblem.
So, we're going to be talking about Fire Emblem, Path of Radiance. In these Is It Worth It episodes, we go into 5 topics: story, gameplay, sound, thank you, price and collectability, and graphics. I skipped graphics on accident. But we hit those 5 topics and kind of talk about all of those and wrap it all up to say, is the game worth the value? Would we buy it? Why or why not? I believe Nate and I own a copy. Brian does not.
Nope. Wish it did.
He wants everything. That's not that big of a spoiler.
That's true,
Sure.
yeah.
I want
That's
the
true.
world.
This piece of garbage game we already talked about. Brian, like, I need it for myself, man.
That's a fact.
For my boxes.
Completionist.
I need everything.
So now.
So this game came out in Japan, April 2005, and then 6 months later in North America in October 2005 era GameCube. This is the 9th Fire Emblem in the series, the 3rd for the US, and the 1st on a North American console. The previous 2 were Game Boy Advance, Fire Emblem and Sacred Stones. So we are pretty late to the Fire Emblem game, but it was a series first for 3D, so the 8 previous ones that Japan got were all 2-dimensional, so this is kind of like a worldwide 3D premiere. Worldwide! Saw it first there.
Nintendo has a pretty good track record of.
It's a tactical strategy RPG. It is GameCube exclusive. There's no other way to play it. I don't think it's on any kind of virtual console or eShop. Obviously, you can emulate it, but it is an exclusive to the GameCube. It's the first in the franchise to feature 3D models, maps, battle screens, and voice acting. The Western release got an easy mode, so apparently they said, y'all can't play games, here's an easy mode, which I'm fine with.
Yeah, me too.
And then the sales were pretty low on this, in combination of low GameCube sales already, and it did release at the end of the GameCube life cycle. The Wii released literally the following year, so very, very, very close to the end of the GameCube life cycle. GameCube is not really known for having role-playing game titles, so, you know, everybody kind of switched over to PlayStation, especially if they wanted those. I mean, like, if you're buying a GameCube and you're an RPG player, like, you're buying them for Zelda. And that was probably about it. So, if you were into more RPGs, you probably had a PlayStation. It's kind of why nobody really played this one.
Say it's not a well-known, like you said, it's a 3rd Fire Emblem game in North America. Unless you're a handheld gamer, you're probably not even familiar with the series.
I feel like even now, Fire Emblem is kind of now, it's just like really getting huge. I feel like this is super early and you had to know what you were looking for to like pick this game up.
And there's reasons for that. I don't necessarily think it's anything part of this game, but the reason that Fire Emblem is so well known now is Fire Emblem Awakening on the 3DS was basically their last-ditch effort. Like, if that game didn't do well, they were going to cancel the series entirely.
Crazy.
At least in North America. I don't know if that's the case in Japan. Not really sure how the reception was in Japan. But they kind of pulled all the stops out for that one. So when that game came out, it is extremely highly rated. It's probably it's the best Fire Emblem game in the series to start with. So if you've never played one, that's the best one. It's the first one to have a casual mode, so nobody, like, if someone that fell in combat, they didn't actually permadie. There's no permadeath in that mode.
Boy, that would have been nice.
I think there's a side mode where you can grind for experience on other maps. Like, previous games don't let you do that. Like, once the map is over, you can't really go back for anything. Just a lot of quality of life stuff. And then that one was also the first, at least North American one, that you could date all of the characters. Like, you could set, and it wasn't just your main character that you could pick, like, oh, there's a whole bunch of people here. Who do I want to marry? It's like you can set all the other characters up with each other. And the way that you did that is you would basically bring both of them in combat and then have them fight close to each other, so they would kind of gain companionship points. And then once you did that enough, they would unlock, like, romance options. And that went over great with people. They loved it. So everybody was like, oh, this game is so amazing. So if Fire Emblem going forward doesn't have a dating romanceable options, like, we know what we want, all right? That's what it is. So, 3DS, when did that one come out?
April 2012 in Japan and 2013 international.
2013, okay. I mean, honestly, that one pushed it forward, but Three Houses is the one that really just shot it out of space, so people have their opinions about Three Houses. I don't think it's the best one, but that's just me. Don't flame me. Anyways, so it's kind of the backstory on Fire Emblem Path of Radiance. The sequel to it, Radiant Dawn, is on the Wii. It's one of the very, very few that have a direct sequel. So I think it's the only North American one that has a direct sequel.
Interesting.
There's tie-ins, but for the most part, they're kind of standalones. If y'all have anything, you can say it, but other than that...
I was going to ask, because I'm not familiar with the Wii version, any of the console ones, honestly, but I was assuming, based on my gameplay experience, which we'll get into later, that it's a direct sequel. I was hoping that's the case, because I might have to borrow that from you.
Yeah, I was really excited to dive in this one. I am totally new to Fire Emblem. I bought this game a couple years ago, just never got around to playing it. I've heard great things about Fire Emblem. I know Barry's a big Fire Emblem fan. I enjoy strategy games. It's just one of those genres I never got really around to, but was really excited to dive into this one, ready to talk about it.
Sick.
Yeah, I'm super excited to play this too. The only experience I ever had was the Game Boy Advance Fire Emblem. I picked it up for like $12 on a whim, not really knowing what it was, and was like, whoa, this game's really good. It's really unique. And then I've also played the NES version, Famicom version on the Switch. I don't remember what that...
Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light.
Yeah, not the Collector's Edition one. I can't remember what the name of it was, but I played that on a plane trip to Boston. So I've got about 5-6 hours into it here and there at the airport.
That one, is it on the store? Is it still...
I don't think so.
Off the store.
I think it's off the store, yeah.
So that one, they did a complete remax. It wasn't a remaster. That's what I like to call them sometimes. It's not a remake. It's kind of more of a remaster of the original, very first Fire Emblem. And then they put that on the Switch. And they put a really cool collector's edition out that had like a cartridge just made out of glass. It's got a cool sticker on it. And just a lot of cool pieces in this collector's edition that came with a download code. There's no like disc for it.
Big art book.
Yeah, big art book. And then they took the digital edition off of the store for some reason. It was like a limited release. I don't
Nintendo likes to do
know
stupid
why.
things like that.
Good old Nintendo.
So I'm not sure if it's back on there as of now. But last I remember, it was taken off of the eShop.
Yeah,
the
so
Nintendo Switch eShop. So
those two super basic kind of original Fire Emblem games is the only experience I have. So I was pretty excited to play a console one. And
as excited as we all are, let's get right into it. So Fire Emblem Path of Radiance story in a nutshell. It's a very political. It doesn't really have anything to do with the Fire Emblem, which is really interesting too. I find that funny. Long story short, one country invades another. Ike's mercenary group is branded as an enemy by association. So Ike's dad, his name is Grail. Is it Grail or Grail?
probably up for debate.
It's Greil. I think it's Grail. It's like Grail's mercenary. So
Yeah.
Ike is his son, and he's like, hey, you're going to take this mercenary group over. And Grail's like super strong. So
Big boy.
The country that they currently reside in is getting invaded by a country next door. And they're like, we don't want anything to do with this. Like, we're mercenaries. We're not part of this. Let's just kind of move along. And they move along right into the enemy group. Dagon is the invading force. They're basically led by this guy named King Ashnard. And he ascended the throne by basically killing off all of his family members. Like, he wasn't even close to being the next in line. And he was like, y'all are weak, I'm killing you all so I can become the king. And so they're invading Crimea. And so that's where they live. They're like, all right, well, we don't want anything to do with this. And they're just happenstance walking along, and the Dayan forces end up coming along and noticing them. And Grail's like, yo, we don't want anything to do with your conflict. We're fine. And they're like, no, your enemy aid, attack them. And so now you're drawn into this conflict by association, sort of. Just being in the land you're already branded as like enemies because you have weapons. Even though you say like, well, we're not a part of this, they don't care. They're just like, wipe anything out inside of this country.
Bloodthirsty.
Yeah. So you kind of get dragged into that. They find a princess hiding in the woods, which at the time they don't know it's the princess. It's just this girl, and it's like, oh, we have to help her, bring her back to the camp. I think it's actually what starts.
Mm-hmm.
I apologize. It's been a second since I've played this, so.
It's a huge story,
Yeah.
honestly.
It starts off fairly straightforward and gets super layered and ends up being like a huge, complex.
And for also transparency's sake, there will be spoilers, so if you're not into spoilers, I just suggest not listening to this, but we're not even going to put a spoiler warning right before we say one. Here's your warning. There's going to be spoilers. So the princess is like, well, you discover she's actually the princess. She ended up escaping, and she's like, oh, you're a mercenary group? Well, I'll hire you to take me and make sure I safely get asylum into the next country over. And Gra's like, all right, let's go. It's a lot of money. She's a princess. Okay, which he has more honorable reasons for it that are ended up being revealed later. But they travel through various lands, and you learn that there's these quote unquote beast tribes, and the people who they're almost like cats, like tigers and lynxes.
Big
and
cats, to be clear, not like house cats, big cats.
No, like big cats.
Butt cats.
And then there's another nation that's kind of more like hawks, look like eagles. And then another one that almost looks like
the bird ones?
Yeah.
They're herons.
They're herons?
Yes.
What are the other ones?
Some dragon people.
No, not the dragon people.
The
The
other
one with the
birds?
dark wings.
Yeah.
Oh, the other ones in the wood. Angel people.
Those
There's
are herons.
they're
I'm horrible with names, guys.
their whole beast thing is like weird, and it's got a lot of backstory because they were one nation and it split up. So there's flying ones.
Ravens.
Okay, there's ravens. There's hawks because of the lighter brown colored one, or he's an eagle. I'm not sure. And then there's herons, and they have the white, and like the white ones are seen as like the royalty, like they were the ones who were like leading their country. And then there's like a dragon one, and the dragon ones like don't talk to anybody. They keep to themselves. Like you usually never ever see them. They don't go around inviting anybody into their country. So you kind of have to make this whole big old loop around through all of their lands to get to the one that you are trying to get the princess safely to. There's a lot of racism in this. Is like they're seen as racially inferior to the humans, which they call the Baroque. Is that what it is?
Mm-hmm.
The Baroque.
The Baroque, yeah.
The Baroque. And it is one of the most prevalent themes of this game. It's handled okay. It's not like...
For the time, I feel like it's handled pretty well.
It's alright.
Like, at least they tried. There's a lot of stuff that wouldn't touch anything like that with the 10-foot pole in that era.
That's true.
Especially
It was
in the GameCube. I appreciate the effort anyways.
It's interesting because it's like it's kind of racism, but it's not kind of racism, but it is, and it's treated as like a weird thing sometimes where I mean you get to a ship town where you're trying to get this boat, it's where you're gonna leave, and like everybody there does not like the Legus, is that what they're called?
Sounds right.
We're
Horrible
very
names.
informational. Yeah, we're great.
You don't understand how layered and thick. Like, it starts off pretty straightforward, but as soon as you start mixing all these countries and characters, played this 2 weeks ago, and it's
been a hot minute for me, so
melting my brain.
No, there's
the Lagus.
Lagu, yeah.
The Lagus. That's what they're known. The Beastmen are actually called the Lagus. So, the Bayork are the humans. That is their proper term. And there's also kind of like racially charged slang and slurs that is used in the game as well. And like you'll find that the characters have to correct each other constantly and be like, "Oh, I've never met one before," and they're like, "No, don't call us that. Like that's an insult. Like don't do it." So it's a lot of racial theme coding in the game.
You got political tension, racial tension, all supercharging all across the nation that you slowly uncover and get stuck to inadvertently.
Right. And then on your way through, Ike's father is killed by this Black Knight. And it's kind of revealed that, like, your dad is, like, super strong. Like, he's one of the 4, like, strongest dudes in this entire continent. And he won't fight anymore. And you're kind of wondering, like, why he won't fight anymore. Especially for a nation. It's not like he doesn't for the mercenaries, but he refuses to be, like, a killing machine for a nation. So he kind of does his own thing. But the Black Knight seems to know him from a previous encounter. And they have a tussle. The Black Knight kills him. And Ike is like, ah! And you can't fight the Black Knight. Like, he is the boss that you can't...
Big baddie.
Yeah, he's the big baddie. He's not the final boss, but he's the big baddie.
They do a really great job of, like, setting him up as a villain, and that's why I was like, hey, is the Wii one connected? Because my thought was, based on my outcome, it's different than you guys's, that they were setting him up to maybe be the boss for the Wii one, so...
They set him up primarily as, like, the emotional final boss, especially for Ike's story. Yeah. For Ike, that is the final boss. Like, for the entire game, that's not. But it's kind of interesting that they have a duality in that sense where the main character has their own personal boss and then you've got the big one that you've got to fight.
Like we said, layers. Lots of layers.
I think it's interesting, though, because it kind of... The way I describe this game... And I don't mean to cut you off, I'm sorry. But, like, there's almost 2 stories going on. There's, like, Ike's coming-of-age story. And then there's, like, the bigger outcome in the world and unveiling all the lore in the main world. It's almost, even, like, the beginning of the game, like, the tutorial of the game is, like, you have to beat your dad. He gives you the rights to become, like, the part of the mercenaries. And it's almost like this mini arc of, like, coming to age, and then it's like, oh crap, all these things around the world are going on at the same time. It's an interesting parallel.
Well, I mean, it's a story that forces Ike to grow up very quickly, so he kind of has to.
Right.
Whether or not he wanted to, he's now put in that position where he has to grow up very fast, and he does not have his dad there anymore to, like, do it for him. So he has to make all these choices as, like, the leader of the mercenary group. And he's like, oh crap, I have all these people looking to me and I don't think I'm worth this title. In
a weird way, it kind of mimics the player too. Like, it's pretty straightforward at first, and then it's like, smack, there's all this crazy stuff going on. The world starts opening up and it gets a little overwhelming. Interesting parallel.
Ike's sister, Mist, has in her possession a medallion that glows for some unknown reason. We don't know really why. This is actually the Fire Emblem.
Yeah.
And the Fire Emblem has no actual pertinent importance in this story, which is not usually the case in Fire Emblem stories. But this one, it is not. I believe it has importance in the sequel, but not this one. Path of Radiance is kind of set up to be a world-building experience, and I think a lot of it comes to fruition in the second one. I honestly have not played that one, so I'm not quite sure how it leads out. I know some of the things that happen in it, but I don't really know how the story fleshes out.
This one definitely sets the table well.
This game pretty much sets, like you said, sets the table and sets the setting for the next one. So I do believe the Fire Emblem has an important role in that one, but in this one it does not.
It's kind of there, and it's like important for you to find it because it gets separated from you at one point, but never really says why it's important. It gives you one breadcrumb trail to follow, and that's really it. It still doesn't explain why it's important even by the end of the game. But you find out that it belonged, your mother was like keeping it safe with the Heron people. Yeah,
I believe it has something to do with the Heron people, and it's they have a language they can sing in where they like activated it or something.
So they are like the guardians of it, but they got massacred, and that's why there's only like a couple Heron people. But your mom was like,
it was complete genocide. So the Heron, now that you bring that up, the Heron people are very interesting because they were just trying to exist in their forest. Like, they don't like the humans anyways. They try to keep away from them, but there was a neighboring country that saw them and was like, we want the forest. So they just razed the entire forest to kill all of them. Targeted specifically the royal family, and 2 of them were able to escape. Two were able to escape. One was escaped and then got captured. And I believe she was put in the same prison that Ike's mother was in.
Yeah, yep.
And that's kind of how the connection happens. You find out later that Grail refuses to fight for anybody because the Fire Emblem does this interesting thing where I believe it can only be held by a certain person, and I don't know why. And this is awful. I apologize. I don't remember why Ike's mom was allowed to do it, and Mist is allowed to do it. It may be a genetic thing, I believe.
They don't really explain it in this one.
Yeah, they don't explain it.
And this is the only one I've played, so I have no idea, no answers for you guys.
But I believe what happened was Ike's mom lost the pendant and his dad got it and held it for some reason. I can't remember if it was an accident or not.
Yeah.
But he basically went into like a bloodlust rage berserker mode and like slayed her. And then when he came to, he realized that he was the reason that she was dying. And like he was like, I can never do this ever again. I'm never taking up the sword. And he ends up being one of the 4 extremely strong people that was in servitude of the Dayon?
Yeah, it was Day.
He was one of the riders.
Dayon?
So I remember.
Dayon. It was Dayon. Yeah, he used to be one of the 4 primary super strong dudes of the Dayon Empire, which is currently invading everybody. So all of their political history is mixed up in crazy places. And it just is, it is layer and layer and layer and layer.
So layered.
So you have to pay
Lasagna
attention very
layered.
close to a lot of these points.
Don't push the A button a lot.
Yeah, don't push the A button a lot.
Oh, we'll get there.
And then on top of all of that, you also have these almost special like companionship options where the closer you grow to some of these characters in battle, I can't remember exactly what they called the system. It was like a support system or something like that. But the more you fought with them, the more you raised your like companionship level with them. And then at some point you would unlock cutscenes that you could talk to them and learn more about their character. So, and then on top of all of that, you've got now these tiny little snippets of all these characters that you could talk to, which like you can't on one playthrough. You can't talk to all of them on one playthrough. It's impossible to get them to S rank.
Yeah, it sounds very messy because it was very layered, but they did a good job of throwing you into this world, kind of giving you piece by piece to fall around in the game where it wasn't too overwhelming where you're like, I can't do this. I feel like it did a good job, almost to a fault, where it just gave you information to go and build this world around you as you were discovering it too. Because Fire Emblem's kind of got the similar thing where they're all standalone-ish. I think we touched on it earlier. So it's a new world for everybody, and it definitely was for this one. I think the game's pacing was pretty good to give you, there's this faction of people in this country, there's this faction of people, and you're kind of like, okay. It just kept layering on. But I feel like the layers were like lasagna, where they end up being a really good combination of everything at once. And it was, yes, you're looking at it, you're like, this is intense, but it felt right.
Yeah, for how much is going on and how much to introduce, because this is the introduction to these cast of characters, they do a really good job of like fleshing the world out in a way where it doesn't feel like boring. Everything seems interconnected because all the characters are. But everybody kind of gets their moment to shine, like you were saying. There's individual within your unit. You can intermingle with them. Even the bosses. The bosses feel like, they make them feel like a big deal. Like the final boss, it's like, oh, here we go. We're getting ready to fight him. There's a build up to it. Or even the Black Knight, like that little mystery. It's great. They make him feel like, oh crap, I can't beat him. And spoiler, I couldn't beat him, but we'll get there. No, they do a really good job of like building up the danger as far as that in the world. Or even like when you're on the ship trying to go around, they're like, oh, this area is messy. And then like you have that huge fight in that area. They do a really good job of the world building. And there is a lot. That's why I'm struggling and I'm horrible with names as there is. Because at the end of the game, you have like 40 different people with you. And it is hard to remember everybody. And honestly, multiple playthroughs would do it wonder. Because like you're saying, to experience some of the other characters' backstories. Or even just get their level high enough to where they're useful in combat. Because there's several I didn't. But
Right.
As far as the story goes, it's a great story. Because I first playing it, there's almost like 3 parts of the story for me. I thought it was really simplistic. And like I said, the only experience I have with Fire Emblem's the Game Boy one. And that one's like, oh, there was a war, fight them. So to have like a big sprawling story, I didn't expect that, honestly. So that was a nice surprise for me.
And it's interesting that like this story, a lot of times when you hear someone say, oh, it's got a very political story, you're like, oh, God.
It's not Star Wars 1. Yeah, it's
Oh,
interesting.
God. Like you just have to listen to people yap on Thrones constantly, but it is like a very heavily political type story, but you're kind of in the trenches of it and experiencing it firsthand. And there's so many highs and so many lows, and you find out like, oh shit, that happened, or oh crap, that happened, or like, oh.
And I feel like you feel for every single one in a certain way because your party gets so intermingled where you almost have an attachment to every nation or faction at some point because your party's you're trying to keep taking people from every party to kind of create that, and you almost like feel for every single one and can see their side of things, and it's very well done for how convoluted it could have been. It came through pretty clear, actually. It just layered.
Right, and there's moments like you said, it gets intermingled. Like there's moments where you have to take certain people, if you take certain people into combat, like they'll have special dialogue with whoever the bosses are. There's a point in time where you get this character named Jill, and she's a Daean. She's not really like a traitor, but she joins your company because she's like, I just really want to kill these beast people, and I see you guys are out here killing them. And you're not really killing them, but like the ravens are attacking you because they're trying to like do some crazy pirate type stuff. So she sees them attacking you and she's like, oh sweet, all these human looking people are killing these guys. I'm gonna go join up with you since I got separated from my unit. And we're like, okay, that's not what we do here, but I guess you can tag along. So through her journey with your group, she learns about the Lagus and like how they're not just like inferior beings that you're just out there to hunt down like animals. And there's a point in time, and I believe it says chapter 20, where if you take her into battle and engage the final boss, her boss is actually her dad. And so he's like, are you going to rejoin us? And she's like, no, you're wrong. And he's like, okay, well then this is where our relationship ends. And like, she has to kill him. And I'm like, damn, man, like Jill was the GOAT. I got her pretty strong. She would just go over there and smack people. But I was like, oh man, that hurts.
And that's one point I do want to bring up at the story. Your overall story of Ike avenging his father, becoming his own person, and all the political war, you're all going to have the same experience, but the intricacies and little differences, like she can actually join that army and fight you too. There's so many little plot points from the characters in this game where we're not going to have the same story, and it's interesting. I think it's really ambitious for the time. It's pretty impressive that they got this on a tiny little GameCube disc. Like there's a lot of content in this game, and the world is extremely rich. We keep saying layered, but if you don't like reading text, there's a lot of text in this game. But it's not fluffy where it's just filling time. I feel like everything adds a new layer, and it's important to the world you're building, not just physically, but like how people interact with each other and different nations who aren't even currently mingling, their thoughts and interactions with that nation. It's super intertwined, and it does feel like a very lived in, fleshed out, thought, well planned, well organized world that they made in this game for sure.
Another thing is like a lot of RPGs can fall into the traps of like having certain tropes that you just hit over and over. This game really doesn't, other than the only correlation of rescuing the princess is kind of similar to Chrono Trigger. But it's a unique story, even though it is your typical like coming of age story, but there's so much going on in the background. They do a really good job presenting it. And yeah, it is reading a lot of dialogue and character conversations, but if you played Fire Emblem, that's part of the game. And they do it in a way where it's interesting and there's enough meat on the bone where it's literally not the same thing over and over. It's like, I haven't seen this in any other Fire Emblem games I've played.
So the gameplay of this game, I want to call it somewhat of a visual novel.
That's totally fair.
It's a tactical strategy RPG. It is not an RTS. People who call it an RTS, I just want to smack you. It's not real-time strategy.
Who the hell calls that real-time strategy? People do.
I've heard it. People call it an RTS.
It's not real-time.
Okay, so
wow.
If you hear anybody call Fire Emblem an RTS, they've never played Fire Emblem. All right, it's a tactical strategy RPG. It's set up on a grid system, so the battlefield's going to be on a grid square system. Some parts of the map are not, you can't move across them. Some parts of the map, you can fly over them with certain units. Some parts of the map will have, like in this square, there may be a tree or a shrub, or if you put a unit inside of this, you'll get like, the ability to dodge up by like 50% or something. Some of the options on the map have different buffs, or horses don't do very well on sand, so they cut their movement speeds in half. Each unit has a different weapon that are like strong or weak against others, including magic, and it's almost like a rock, paper, scissors type system. If I remember correctly, sword is strong against axe is strong against lance, and lance is strong against sword. But then there's other layers on top of that where there's armored units, there's horse units, there's flying units, there's archers, there's magic, which they all have their own tree of doing things. Magic users and archers primarily can shoot further distances. So normally when you attack, you have to go up right to the square next to you and attack them, but some have a distance of 2 squares. Some special weapons that an axe wielder can have, you equipped a certain weapon like called a hand axe, you can actually throw it, so it gains them actual distance. And that gets pretty dangerous because lance users can also do that. I don't think sword users can. Maybe there's a couple weapons that can. I know Ike can at one point.
Yeah.
Sword, I would say sword for the most part can't do that. Armored units move extremely slow. Horse movements move extremely fast. So does Pegasus Knights and Wyvern Knights. So there's a lot of different spices inside of that battle system that once you start trying to figure out what they are, you're like, oh, I have to think a little bit more than just like moving pieces on a board and attacking.
I'll say this though, I feel like even though it does, by the end of the game you have a lot of different units and a lot of different strategies, I feel like it does a really good job of introducing you to those units so it doesn't just throw them all at you at once. It doesn't hold your hand, but at the same time it's not like it knows it's throwing more information at you, and I feel like you grow with the game as far as like introducing those unit types. Yeah. Even like the system where you can like change their type. Yeah, there is a kind of harsh learning curve where it does not explain some things to you, and you kind of have to learn it as you're like, this didn't explain this to me in tutorial. What does this mean? Like, why am I attacking this unit that I know I'm strong against, but it's telling me that like I'm gonna die? It's weird. You have the opportunity before you actually engage in a fight to see like your probability of winning, which is really nice. So if I'm putting my unit up against this one, it's like, okay, sometimes they can hit more than once. I have to take that into account. Once you learn to read how the battle system calculates damage, it gets super easy to be like, oh, okay, don't go after that guy, don't go after that guy. Pretty much when I used a baiting system, so I didn't actually engage enemies myself if I didn't have to. If I wasn't confident, I would actually bait them. So there's a button where you can click on it and it'll show you all the movable squares and their colors. And if you highlight a unit, it'll show you on their next move how far they can move and how far they can attack. So I would actually bait those units and I would move mine as close as I could, but right outside their attack range. So when they moved on the next time, I could be like, oh, I got them close enough to attack me, and I just wiped them out. So there's different ways you can play this game, but for the most part, you kind of have to learn some of the specifics about the battle as you go. It is simple in theory, but pretty complicated in execution. I think go ahead.
Man, go ahead.
I was going to say, I feel like it starts out simple enough, and then eventually it hits a point where we're like, oh, like there's a lot going on. Mm-hmm. There's always things to learn. For example, for me, initially I was using the same like 2 or 3 characters just to wipe everybody. And I think you guys came over when I was playing it, and Barry was like, hey, like, make sure you use everybody else. And I was like, yeah, whatever. She smashes everything. I'm good with using her. Yeah. And then my Lance guys, I didn't level them up enough, and they died. There's permadeath in this game, by the way. So yes. You lose characters. They're gone forever. And initially I was like, all right, I need to save them and level them up. But towards the end, I was like, I want to beat this before we do this podcast. But yeah, there's so much strategy, more than just you're moving your soldiers on the board and trying to figure out who goes where. It's interesting, man. Like, the replayability of that alone is what makes this game like why you want to go back and play it again.
For this game to be called RTS is complete bullshit. So I'm pretty seasoned in the RTS field. I'm very new. This is probably my first grid style strategy game. I didn't play a lot of like XCOM or anything like that. So there was some mechanics. For full disclosure, I'll get that checkbox. I started this game, felt similar to Brian's experience where I was kind of cruising about 25% into it and realized, oh God, I fucked my playthrough up completely. So I actually restarted it.
Yeah, it's very easy to do that if you don't know what's going on.
I went and got some help because there was certain mechanics I was having trouble with, and I had a way better experience playing it. I almost kind of ended up inadvertently breaking the game at some points where I could just fly through it with no fear, which felt pretty cool, but I needed to do it because I'd like to play this game again, honestly, and thankfully I own it or I can do that because there's a lot of little things where you won't get your first time playing, maybe even your second time playing, but the actual gameplay base, super challenging, but not too challenging, just for the sake of being difficult. It's not one of those games that's going to like just taunt you and want you to die. If your deaths, they feel like they're earned. Like if you screw up, it's like, okay, I did this wrong. You kind of calculate it, know why it happened.
Yeah, there was plenty of times where like I refuse to let anybody die. That doesn't happen. I get everyone, they all live. So anytime I had a single character wipe, I reset the whole match. Every single time. So my playthrough, I have way more hours in it than like it actually reads. But there are points in time where like I would be confident in my moves and be like, yeah, all right, sick. I'm ready for the next one. And I would just completely miscalculate one of the enemy's ability to attack at a distance and put one of mine in the red zone and just get decimated. I'm like, oh no. I am like 3/4 of the way through this and I'm like, nope, reset. Like I can't do it. I can't. And there's so many, and they're not short. Okay,
No.
Each one they're long,
They
and so
get really long.
I'd say
So
towards the end of the game, man, you get hour battles.
they're long. And I
Yeah.
get to a point. I couldn't remember off the top of my head now, but I had to have done it at least 4 or 5 times, and it was a long one. I think it was one in the forest when it was like a three battle altogether. It was like a triple hit.
Yeah, that's the thing with some of these battles too. They're not just like maps that stay static. They will move and like you kind of evolve with different events happening when you progress the battle.
Mm-hmm. And each map is different, I believe.
Yeah.
Depending on how many turns. So some of the maps you have to complete in a certain amount of turns. In this one, it's very rare. It doesn't happen very often. Some of the later games, it happens a lot more often than you would imagine. But this one, there was very few matches where you had to resolve it in X amount of turns. There's also different battle styles. So like some of them are like, hey, you need to get here in a certain amount of time. One of them is like, hey, you need to escape, and anybody left behind is screwed. Like once Ike hits that finish line, like y'all's is done. Or it's just like rout the enemy, and that means you wipe every single person out. And if you spend too many turns doing things, reinforcements will show up and you have to deal with them. Sometimes you do want that to happen because playable characters that you can gain will come as reinforcements. So I took my time. When I played those matches, I'd move very slowly, and if I knew there was an enemy that I wanted to recruit, I would kind of move a group over there and inch them up, bait people, decimate them. The ones where inside the buildings are the best, because it would be like hallways where you can only have 2 units standing there, and they'd block the way, and you just put your 2 up front that slap people and just stand there and wait for them to come to you. Because like the enemies won't wait. Like when it's their turn, they'll move closer to you to try and like start attacking. At least in easy mode. I don't know how it is in the other ones. I played in easy. I don't care.
Same.
But they would come to me, so I'm just like, all right, like I'm not on a time limit. I can take as many turns as I want to. Y'all can just come to me and attack me first, and just wipe them out, murder them.
So you brought up the buildings and things. I think it's interesting. Initially in the game, you're fighting in a lot of like small towns, and there's buildings you can go in that give you buffs and everything. One, I guess, minor criticism I have with the game is later on you have so many units in the battle, they're so big, it kind of turns into big open plains with maybe just like elevation differences. I feel like the earlier maps, the smaller battles with the houses and the different buffs and things were probably, they were interesting because it's different strategy, right? But at the same time, you get all those units moving around in the last battles, it's chaotic and it's hectic and you're sweating. You don't want to lose an hour worth of progress.
You definitely go from like managing skirmishes to managing like a fucking full-on fucking war. But
I mean, that's pretty much coincides with the story, though. Going from Ike having a small mercenary group and doing skirmishes in small towns to you basically are Lord Commander of a whole army and you're fighting another army. The battle's feeling big and like you having to actually split your teams off into 2 or 3 groups, and then like, okay, let me set up this group over here, and let's cut down to this group and make sure they're set up over here and do this. It feels like you're supposed to be commanding this army.
Yeah.
and you've evolved with the game. So it does get big and chaotic, but it's like, this is the path that Ike has taken and he's put into, and now I feel like I'm that as a player too, where it's like, all right, I've grown from having my own mercenary group to like a whole damn army.
So one of the brilliant things about this game is that more than any game I played recently, it definitely immerses you into the actual story and the world. Like, you feel like you're growing with it, like with your main character, Ike. It doesn't feel like you're watching Ike's life. It feels like you're experiencing it with them, which is pretty damn cool. For a strategy game to be able to kind of pull that off, it's very impressive.
Outside of battle, you have a base. At one point, you start to get your base, and how this game is structured is you basically have a big old chunk of cutscene. You get to go to the base, you set up your units for what's going to be happening, you give them new equipment, fix their swords, yada yada yada, whatever you need to do, talk to them,
Lots of talking.
buy some items, whatever, and then you engage in the battle, and after the battle is over, there's usually a big ol' cutscene again, and then once that cutscene's done, you get back into your base, set up your units for the next battle. It's basically like a three cycle. Cutscene, base, battle, cutscene, base, battle. That's how it is. The cutscenes sometimes are as damn long as the battles, so it's not like you're getting a big chunk and then you're getting a big chunk of something different, and then you're getting a big chunk of something different. It is flip-flop, so it doesn't feel like, okay, it's just cutscenes for like 4 hours. You know after that cutscene you're about to have a long battle, so
Yeah.
it gives you a nice break, because sometimes they are exhausting, especially when you're repeating them and resetting them.
They are definitely like your some of your skirmishes and wars feel like they're battles of attrition for sure. And then honestly, as much as it helps build the world and the characters' individual plights, some of the conversations felt like you were having a battle of attrition too.
So inside of this base, you can change class. So at one point in the game, you can basically use these master seals to upgrade your character's classes. So, for instance, Mist can become a Valkyrie once you upgrade her class. So now she has access to using swords, staves, because she's a healer, and she can ride a horse. So when you get these class upgrades, sometimes it opens up the ability for some of your characters to use new weapons. Very few of them come upgraded, so a big problem with this game early on is if you don't know what you're doing, Titania is such a powerhouse.
Yep.
That she's already a master seal level class. She's a paladin. Paladins don't start off as paladins, so you're kind of already given a handicap because you want to use her the whole time because she just decimates people and nobody else gets experience. So now when you get a little bit further in the game, you realize like, oh shit.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Oh no, like you can't rely on one character, and that's very important to understand in tactical strategy games.
Yeah, you pay for it for sure.
99% of the time, you cannot rely on one character. You have to give everybody else some time. So one thing that they added in this game, because you can only take certain amount of units per fight, they give you bonus experience depending on how fast you do the levels. I think there's some other stipulations. How fast it is, I think. How many enemies are left. Yeah. Something like that. There's some under the radar type. They don't tell you. Yeah, they don't tell you what the side objectives are. It just gives you bonus experience. And then that experience you can bank and then divvy out to your characters at the base. What I kind of did was I ran the game with the units that I was comfortable with. And then once I hit like the last 2 or 3 chapters, I think I just dumped. I dumped my experience on whoever was the weakest because I was like, all right, I know who I'm going with this final battle. I'm beefing all of you up as much as possible. Using all my master seals, whatever I need to do to get you up there. I just kind of banked them. But it does give you the option to give experience to characters that you don't normally take in combat. Especially helpful when you get characters later in the game.
Absolutely.
And that's a big problem to me a lot of the times with RPGs is like late game additions. I don't usually add them. I don't use them. If you gotta think about a game where you're two-thirds of the way through and you've already established a connection with some of these characters and you get a new one, it's like, sorry, I'm not using the new one.
This is my homie. I've already traveled this whole journey with you. Like, we finished in this, boy. Like, we ain't dumping you for some new...
Right.
Yeah.
And then, like, some of them, it's the same thing as, like, Pokemon. Like, if you raise a level 5 Pidgey and it's level 20, it's going to be as stronger than a level 20 Pidgey in the wild. So, like, these new additions that you're getting to your team at late levels, like, they're not as strong as the dudes you've been beefing up this whole time. So, it's like, it doesn't give me an incentive to use them. and the only incentive I get is if I need to use them to gain other units, just to collect units. I don't, like... So...
I had a similar approach where early on in my game, the second time I played it, because the first one did not go great, was kind of spread out the love. And once I knew I was kind of getting towards the end, like just dump into the characters I knew I was going to use. And my Ike was invincible by the end of this game.
Yeah.
I didn't use Ike a whole lot early because he wasn't
Ike's squishy,
great,
and then he turns into a powerhouse.
But, oh my god, it's broken how powerful he is. I had this skill on him where he could absorb damage and reflect it, and it was like this stupid sword that he had.
Yep.
So,
Brian, with you and the Black Knight, there is a way to beat him, and you basically take Ike in there with an ability where he can auto-counter.
Yep.
And I think he gets double attack. So, and then you have Mist in there as well as a Valkyrie, because ads will come in, other enemy units will come in and try and attack her. So you have to make sure she's a Valkyrie, so she's on a horse, so she can move fast. And then she also has the very specific stave that lets you heal at any distance. So she can stay as far away from Ike as possible and heal him, even if he's like 15 squares away. So he's automatically getting healed and then just doing these double moves on this guy constantly. It's a little bit of it's some work, but like that's how you beat him.
Yeah, I wish
Aether,
honestly,
I think it was Aether, that skill.
I wish after going through it, I wish I would have looked and found some of that, because probably my playthrough would have been more manageable.
Because here's the thing, all right, I had to beat the Black Knight. I don't care. I was like, I'm looking up a guy.
I didn't even know you could.
I'm like, Ike's dad. Oh, well, I looked it up. I was like, I'm not going in this game blind. I'm not stupid, okay? Like,
I guess I'm stupid.
Like, I was like, is there a way to beat the Black Knight, or is this going to be like a later thing? And it was like, how to kill the Black Knight. And I said, oh, there's a chance I can do it. I'm like, okay. So I honestly I master sealed Mist a little bit too early for my liking. But you can do it. And I said, this man killed my father. We're killing the Black Knight.
doing it for Ike.
Doing it for Ike. That's Ike's finality is the Black Knight. So you can kill him.
It's interesting how you can get thrown these characters and we can all kind of envision them different. And like character I had a great time with, Rayson, he has an ability where he can give units in his proximity an extra move. So it's like your axe guys, for example, who weren't that great, instead of just using them kind of as fodder, you could keep them near him, let him use his attack, then you could use this ability after his attack where it gave everyone in your circle around you an extra attack. So you could have 4 people with them. You could add up to basically you're attacking 6 times per turn. It was insane. It was so rewarding to pull off because you had to kind of plan the moves in advance because everyone's not kind of hanging out with you to start the map out. But if you knew what you were doing, it was so satisfying to pull off. Like, it was dope. But then there's, it's interesting. We had different approaches. I had a guide to help me because I was like, yo, this is so overwhelming. It's fun how you can kind of find your own way to use a character and put your own spin on it. It really makes this game unique for everyone who plays it.
I was going to say, as far as gameplay additions based on my minimum experience with Fire Emblem, having the ability to change weapon types and just everything, you can basically cater the character to your liking. And then, not to jump too far ahead, but like the transforming units and stuff, there's a lot of different strategies and way to go about things that keeps it fresh and keeps it interesting. And I do think it does a good job of like pacing with that until by the end it's like, all right, you've got it, figure it out, play your way.
Yeah,
but, I paid for it early on too, though. Like, my early struggles were tough. It got easier as it went on when I had OP characters, but yeah, there's definitely a right and a wrong way to do things, and I wish I would have done a little research. But it was fun. I'm sure I missed a bunch of story bits for losing characters, but it's rewarding when you do something right. I'll put it like that.
There is I can see a lot of the reasons why people can't get into this series, especially the older ones, is like, it is very hard to get into if you've got no idea what's going on, and it's almost frustrating to feel like you're so strong in the beginning of the game, and as you go, you just get your butt kicked, and you're like, this game sucks. Whatever. Like, I'm not playing this game anymore. Forget this. Moving on. And then there's a different type of crowd who's like, okay, what am I doing wrong? Like, they're more the people who enjoy strategy games, which is fine, but they're more thinking of like, I'm doing something wrong fundamentally here. I got to figure out what's going on and backtrack. And as long as you're okay with comfortably resetting at a certain, like, if I'm in chapter 20, I'm not resetting. All right. I'm going to try and do the same thing over and over. But it is very difficult to get into if you're not familiar with the franchise or how strategy games work, especially tactical strategy games. Like, they kind of all are the same flavor, but sometimes they have different things about them that you have to understand. And if you can't get those fundamentals down, you're not going to have a fun time at all.
Good thing I like strategy games because I enjoyed restarting it and had a way better experience after I kind of had a little help realizing what I was doing. But that's the thing with this game. There's even more gameplay mechanics and stuff. Why don't you talk about a few more, Barry?
One of the things I really like about this game is it takes its time dumping game mechanics on you. I remember I was in like chapter 7 or 8 and it's still like giving you a new mechanic to learn about. I was curious because I had experience with these things before, so I was kind of curious on like how Nate would take it. Was it too fast or was it too rushed, or especially not too rushed? But some games like this will dump everything down on you at one time and be like, okay, play the game. And so I'm sitting here like, I know how to do this.
Yeah, no, for me, I feel like it did a good job of like giving it to you, letting you kind of experience it. It was just more of me understanding it sometimes, but like, I don't know if you're going to be a talking point for you and stuff, but like the biorhythm and all that, like, it felt like there was stuff hidden in stuff sometimes in this game.
The biorhythm stuff, I didn't even mess with it. I was like, I don't care.
I didn't either.
I saw it and was like, nah, I'm just going to slap people.
So
I don't care.
Since it's not even a point, we'll talk about it for a second. Half of it wasn't how the game told me, it was how I interpreted it. Because I was like, oh my God, I got to really pay attention. So my first playthrough when I was getting like beat up, I was like really heavy following this. Early reading this guide, like, don't even worry about it, dog. It's not going to be a factor. And I was like, well, damn, I was over here like making it my gospel and like keeping people away when their shit was down. And it's funny how the game made me feel like when I first played it, like it's an important thing I really have to pay attention to. And like, oh crap, his biorhythm's down. I got to kind of use them differently than I would. Then it's like, dog, don't worry about it.
No, like at a core, it's about the rock, paper, scissors mechanics. Yeah. That's it. Which
is good because I don't feel like the biorhythm really added anything. I didn't even notice when it was up and I was like, oh, I'm doing more. I was like, okay.
At a basis, as long as you can understand how to see how far your units can move and where they can attack, you having a variety of weapons available to you. So if you have an axe user who has a normal, pretty strong axe, a throwable axe, and then an axe that specializes for certain types of units. Like you've got a mix of them in your crowd. You can have somebody who specializes in something somewhere where they have versatility. You can't have one dude run just 3 silver axes and be okay, because that silver axe is going to come up against somebody who's not very strong, so you need some versatility. And like as long as you can do those 2 things, for the most part, you're going to be okay with the game.
Yeah.
And once you get the healer and the buffers.
I didn't use buffs.
I used a shitload of buffs.
Because
I screwed up. That's the only way I could like catch back up because I didn't level up the guys I needed to, so I had to.
I just full force, strong-armed everything.
You play like a tank.
Yeah. And then one last... one of the big things about this game is you can recruit characters. A lot of them are on the battlefield and a lot of them are hidden. So unless you take a certain unit with you on the battlefield to talk to a certain kind of person, you may lose out on a unit. And that's a big, big part of Fire Emblem as a game, is what people look for, is like the amount of characters that you can get and the secrets they kind of hold. One of the worst things about Fire Emblem across the board is the horrible battle animations. They're too long.
Yeah.
They're too long. They're too boring. They're kind of cool to see for the first couple times, and then you say, okay, and you turn them off and you skip them. All right. It makes the thing so long. It's already kind of long as it is. I'm not going to watch Titania throw an axe and then watch the guy swipe a sword and then go back and see her throw an axe again. I want the conflict resolved. You see it just to be like, cool animation.
Especially with this one.
All right, I'm done.
It's the first one they like added 3D battle animations. But yeah, this game...
very quickly, you better turn that off.
Turn that off.
You're going to get bored.
Well, there's your answer why my save was so long. I didn't know you could turn them off.
Oh, Brian!
Bro, what? Are you being serious?
You didn't know you could turn the battle animations off?
No, it was in my
why didn't you ask me?
I didn't know.
Brian! Oh, it
was in my critique.
Look, the 40 hours.
Yeah, seriously.
The 40 hours makes sense
now.
There's
your answer.
Oh.
Where's it not bigger? Because some of those are slogs, dude.
No, like the late in the game when you have these serious, not exaggerating, 45-minute to an hour battles. Yeah.
Bro.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, that explains it.
Oh my god.
No, you have to. Like,
yeah.
You guys speed up, turn off those animations, because like this isn't an action strategy. This is a pure strategy game. It is slow pace, which is a good... I found that enjoyable. but man, default it is so slow. I know this
So-
game's criticized for its speed sometimes because even this one's like a very slow.
Oh my god.
Brian, you're a soldier, man. Thank you.
Oh my god.
It wasn't intentional.
There's always one out there, isn't there?
I was going to get to that critique in the graphics category, but we can...
Well, you know what? You can turn the battle animations off, and Brian, would you do it if you played the game again?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
All right, turn them
Absolutely.
off. Turn them off. It's funny, though, because they have them in every single game, and everybody's like, forget these, but they still put them in. You know what? I appreciate the consistency, but still give me the option to turn them off, and all is grand. Sound. So, Fire Emblem sound effects are iconic. Not so much the music. That noise that pops up when like you level up, across the board, every single game's gonna have that mechanic, and like every time I hear it, I just feel good. I'm like, ah, yes! I can have it as a ringtone and just hear it and just like hit me where it's like, leveled up my unit. And it goes ting 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 when it like gives you all the stat bumps. Amazing. And it's so like classic and clear cut that if they ever changed it, like people would rage. Absolutely rage. There's something just like so crisp about them, and like I don't know how to critique sound choices, but the choices that they use for the level up specifically and the stat bump are just
Simple and effective. Like
something else. They're like masterclass.
I didn't realize they carried over through the whole series. That's cool.
Yeah, it's just like, especially if you've been playing Fire Emblem for so long, like every time it happens, it just hits you with like this wave of nostalgia. Just like the first time you played a Fire Emblem game and you're like, oh yeah, that like feel good sound. You're like, yeah, I leveled up. Yeah.
That's dope.
Kind of like how it's like a transcendent sound for a series, and I like that, where it ties everything together, where it's like, here's a thematic sound and it has it, and that's, to me, that's Fire Emblem's is the level up and the stat. There's a couple other ones, but those are like the sounds. To be honest, the music, it's repetitive, dude.
The battle music specifically.
Yeah,
Oh my
Yeah, I was
god.
going to say the battle music's pretty redundant, but
It's like, it's not bad, but once
yeah.
I've heard it on cycle, and so then like, okay, I got this battle music that I hear constantly after so long, cool, and then the Black Knight shows up and I'm like, oh, that music again. Every single time a bad person shows up, it's the same villain music, and I'm like, dude, the variety of music in this game is not good.
I'll say I think the music during like the painted scenes in the
Like the transitional ones? Okay.
yeah.
that was like full orchestra, and that was nice. Like that was
Agreed.
good.
I think they're standout.
And then, like
actually.
even the CG scenes had some, but it is a weird contrast how like you get this full born orchestra music during like your, I guess,
quiet moments.
Yeah.
That really added to a scene. Yeah.
or even like some of the music during like the dialogue, it was very repetitive.
Like I said, the music was great, but like
It's not bad.
Dude,
It's just repetitive.
after
Honestly,
you hear it so many times, I'm like, man, shut that shit off.
Dog, within battle admissions, you must have heard that battle music in your sleep
that's
for
what I
days.
no, seriously. Like
Days.
That's why I put in my notes. Is like
Oh
it's
my
very repetitive. It's
God.
not bad, but it is super repetitive.
Voice acting is awful.
They did it though.
Okay, and here's the biggest critique I have about the sound. Like, not only is the music repetitive, that's fine. The sound mixing during the cutscenes, I don't know what happened, but everything was so loud and the voices were so
It's like a
quiet.
Blu-ray, yeah.
And I was like,
Noticeable.
did it have cutscenes or not cutscenes? Subtitles?
I didn't turn them on if it
Doing,
did.
like the CG one.
Yeah.
I didn't have them on.
I don't know if it's I didn't turn them on if it did.
See, I would have turned them on,
I
but I
clearly
can't
didn't look in
remember.
the fucking options. So
I think there was, because
There
I feel like I
was,
remember
yeah.
being like, oh, it's a good thing there's subtitles because I can't hear what the
If you
fuck
can't hear
he's
shit,
saying.
There were subtitles.
It was
yeah.
horrible. So I don't know if it was just the studio's first experience with cinematics like that and trying to mix voice acting because they're not familiar with it, but like you cannot hear what they say. So like these big moments, especially like when Ike's dad dies, or at the very end cutscene when he like talks to the princess sitting on the throne and being like, come out and like talk to your people. Like you can't hear what anybody's saying, so it just ruined it. I was like, get this nasty looking cutscene out of my face that I can't even hear anything to. In the little bits I do hear, the voice acting is just like, what does Ike say at the end? something stupid. And he says it in such a condescending way. And I'm like, boy, you are like 16. All right. I know you're like Lord Commander of everything now, but like, shut up. I'm cutting that.
No, I will say though, I was expecting a little more as far as like, I'm not necessarily expecting fully voiced between the characters, but as for a console version of this game, you think they would put a little more into it. That makes sense.
This was a lot put into this game.
Yeah, for the time, it was
a lot. And you gotta think that they probably, I have a feeling that they might have meant this maybe to be longer and was like, oh, the Wii's coming out, we better start developing for that too. So they just split them, maybe invested more of their resources into that title. Because
weren't they developing one of the handheld ones at the same time?
Simultaneously, yeah.
So
I believe it was Shadow Dragon.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Which is the remake of the first one.
Yeah.
DS one, which it did not receive very well.
Well, when you're stretched that thin, overall, I think sound's definitely the weakest aspect of this game. And it's not horrible in parts, but the voice acting, like the fact that, hey, it's there, but it's noticeably bad and not bad enough to be endearing where you're like, God, this is so bad it's good. It's just not very good.
You know what? They tried, but I really wish they would have taken that money and put it somewhere else, right. Like after what we got.
It's not enough to ruin your experience by any means.
No.
But it is noticeable to be like, hey, we need to talk about this for a moment because we could probably throw together a better voice acting job with the three of us.
Yeah.
So
we could do a better sound mixing job probably
definitely
too.
That
was the biggest thing is like half the time, you know what, the voice acting was bad, but the other half of the time I don't even know if it was bad because I couldn't hear it. So especially being on my TV and not having headphones, I'm already partially deaf as it is. Like I can't without subtitles. Thank God for subtitles. You know, Nate, you had just said that you thought sound was the weakest, and I actually put down here I think graphics are the weakest point.
Same.
I could see that. I don't have the same
my tongue.
No, go ahead.
Experience of Fire Emblem. I don't have anything to compare it to. I know I have GameCube games to compare it to that I've played, but I don't have like a Fire Emblem to compare it to. So this is very like, probably in my perspective, a little differently judging it than others. The 3D was there. It was ambitious because there was battles where there was a ton of people on screen and it looked fine enough. Obviously, when you're doing strategy games, graphics aren't going to be the primary selling point. But looking into this game, you could see it was kind of a marketing, like, hey, this is 3D. It's going to be a big deal. And there's CG cutscenes. It's going to be impressive. Those were there. They were acceptable. For the time, they weren't bad. I was blown away with the hand-drawn art, though.
So this game is very interesting to me because, like, this isn't a studio that's unfamiliar with the GameCube. And the hand-drawn 2D scenes are exceptionally well because that studio knows how to do them well. But, like, the 3D was the worst part of this game. The cutscenes, honestly, take them out. Mm-hmm. Give me normal 2D slices, like, I get it at the time, it was kind of a sell point where it's like, oh, 3D graphics for the first time in video games, and now we're just like so numb to it where it's like, where's 6-dimensional graphics? Like, I don't know. So I could do without them because there's something special about pixel art, and they do pixel art exceptionally well. The art that's hand-drawn for the character sheets and like the character design are fantastic, and they translate that to the pixels so well. The cutscenes are just bad. Yeah. They're not good.
They're dated.
And, like, the gameplay doesn't suffer for that, but it's not as strong. And, like, that usually happens when a game converts over to the 3D for the first time. Like, Rune Factory suffered for it, too. I'm pretty sure Harvest Moon did as well. So, like, that's a natural course of things when games convert over to the 3D. But the worst, honestly, I say the graphics were the worst part in this because the 3D made the units so hard to distinguish on the battlefield sometimes that I would lose track of them. I was like, okay, where's my horse guy, green jacket? I think that's him. Or, like, it just kind of muddled all together because the units would get so small that they hadn't developed, like, the models very well for the
crisp
field.
Enough to, like, stand out. Yeah.
So it was hard to find where they were at, and then, like, then they would blend in with the environments, and then you would get hidden behind some stuff sometimes, and I'd have to, like... I played that game top-down. I don't play it, like, isometric. I can't do it, so I have to go play top-down, and I'm, like, squinting, like, which one's which? Can I get some, like, character names above their heads, please? Like, it's a struggle.
I don't think the 3D added anything to it. It felt like a novelty where it was there. You can acknowledge it. I don't think it was... I would have had a more rich experience playing this in 3D than if there was an old school Fire Emblem. I don't think it'd make a difference for me personally.
That was honestly my biggest knock for this. If I'm going to be constructively critical at all, was that the only experience I had was with handheld 2D Fire Emblem games. And some of the art on the Game Boy Advance, it looks great, like the characters and everything. This, I think the designs were really nice. Like every character looks unique, every race is completely different. But I don't feel it translates exceptionally well to the 3D models, like you were saying, especially in, like, on the board, right? I think during the battle animations, they look fine. I think the animations could use some work. Very simplistic as far as animations go. The units don't really move when they're on the board. One of my biggest disappointing things for this game, not necessarily the graphics themselves, but I don't even want to say lack of polish. I don't know how to word this. But for to make the jump from handheld to console, I feel like there was a missed. It doesn't feel like it's that big of a transition. The way I had it worded in my notes is like if you look at all the other Nintendo 3D properties, right, when they make the jump from 2D to 3D, you have like Donkey Kong to Donkey Kong 64. It's like drastically different. You have Metroid to Metroid Prime. It's like drastically different once it jumps 3D. I appreciate that they left this like Fire Emblem, but the jump from handheld to console, I feel like there should have been something more with like you said, the CG cinematics, they're acceptable for the time, but as far as like the gameplay, like, the animations are kind of poor. I don't think it like destroys the gameplay or anything, but when you don't
It's rough to look at.
When you don't turn off those battle animations and you just see this 600 times in an hour, it's kind of rough.
My biggest complaint with the graphics overall, I feel like the color palette was pretty weak, especially like I get it on the battlefield, but like it was a very muddy green.
Yeah, and I think that's the detriment of like they just didn't know what to do with 3D graphics, and like Intelligent Systems makes exceptional 2D work. Like Paper Mario and the Thousand Year Door still stands up to this day for being an exceptionally well-made game graphically. Then you look at Cube of War. So it's like they also did Cube of War, and like if you've seen anything about Cube of War, it's like Minecraft on the GameCube. If that, like, it's a struggle to look at. I also don't know if it's supposed to be stylistic because it's Cube of War, but like I could tell they can't do 3D at the level that they can do 2D because they're also doing like WarioWare,
which is vibrant as hell. Yeah,
I think they also did Advance Wars and stuff like that. So like they are. I'm not sure about that one. But I know for a fact they did Paper Mario, WarioWare, and Cube of War, and then just like comparing those two 3D games to like the 2D games, like there is a huge difference.
Oh yeah.
I don't know what they're making now. But Fire Emblem shouldn't have been a 3D game, I guess, until the Switch. Which the Switch one looks fantastic. Don't get me wrong, it looks like what the Switch kind of goes for in terms of here's an anime style game. I still prefer 2D for tactical games.
For this series, that's my biggest disappointment was like the 3D didn't add anything. So
it's just surprising to know, like you kind of touched on, Brian has a great track record of that jump being memorable. Like Super Mario 64, obviously, legendary. 2 examples you gave. You can just keep going.
Well, Donkey Kong 64 sucked, but it's
looked impressive.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It changed the game. This didn't change anything, which I respect them for keeping Fire Emblem in its core. But like when you jump from a handheld to a console, there's got to be something. And yeah, there's a lot of depth in the gameplay with the units and everything. I'm just talking about like graphically speaking.
And you could
give me that 2D all day because some of those sprites on the GBA are beautiful.
They're trying to keep up. I mean, like the modern market is all obsessed with 3D, and I think they were just trying to stay modern.
Yeah.
Which like you look at the next iterations of like Radiant Dawn is kind of the same, but you go to Shadow Dragon and it's all the handhelds are 2D as they should be.
Mm-hmm.
I think they tried to dabble in some kind of 3D cutscenes on the 3DS ones, and they looked okay, but it wasn't like the star of the show, which we know what the star of the show is now. It's dating people. Okay. All right. But
I can't imagine that mechanic in this game. And make it wild. Like, it's already so layered. That sounds so intimidating to me as like a newbie to
it's
Fire
so
Emblem.
fun. So anyway, yeah, it is a lot. So trying to add it into a game like this, like, yeah, you're like, oh god. You're already like, oh, I have to pay attention to so much that's going on. But you know what? Maybe they could have got rid of that stupid bioluminescence thing or whatever it was called.
Biometric,
whatever.
Yeah.
Bioluminescence, like glowing creatures.
You know what? Get rid of the biometric and give me the booby metric. Let's go.
You know what? Get rid of the biometric, get rid of the 3D, add romance.
That's what they did.
Yeah.
And it worked.
That's what they did.
They're
It's
listening.
weird. The two things I was looking forward to the most about playing a Fire Emblem game on a console, neither one of them panned out. The sound and the graphics.
What? You weren't excited about this exceptional gameplay?
Well, I mean, I knew it would be Fire Emblem. I knew there'd be, new depth to it. I knew I was getting into in that regard. I was like, I want to see what's different from the console and the handheld.
Okay, that's fair. That's
Yeah.
fair.
I'm probably not articulating that. I'm like halfway through the surge, like wigging out. So
There's far better examples of games with decent graphics on GameCube. This one does feel a bit dated, and it's funny because it came out towards the end of the life console. So
Yes.
I feel like it definitely kind of missed the mark in this one.
And I'd be curious on some of that development history, but it does seem like they were diverting majority resources to Radiant Dawn because it was a new console. I wish I had more of an informed opinion on that because I have not played the Wii one, but that's my best guess. Is diverting resources to the next gen console makes the most sense, so. Price and collectability. As I said before, GameCube sales were already pretty low. So, VG Charts apparently reports that it has 0.54 million. So about 500,000 copies sold. That's a pretty decent amount, all things considered, if
more
that's
than I
accurate.
thought, honestly.
This game is not uncommon. It's just hard to find someone who will let it go. You can find copies of this all freaking day on eBay online. It's not a ghost. It's not anything scarce. It's just a matter if you're going to want to fork out the money for it because of the pedigree of the game.
I think it's desired,
because
not
of
rare, right?
because of Ike. All right, Ike being in Smash Brothers was like, who is this character? What's Fire Emblem? Blah, 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 blah. And then it just shot the price up because people are like, Ike's cool. I want Ike. What's Ike's game? Oh, this game.
It's a full Nintendo game, like series I don't know about. Like,
Right.
Yeah, definitely.
It's the same thing that happened with Shulk. Like, not to go off too much on a tangent, but when Shulk came to Super Smash Brothers, we didn't have Xenoblade Chronicles in North America. And then Operation Rainfall happened, and they're like begging them, like, please bring these games over. It was that, I think, Lost Story, the Sakaguchi game, and then I think Pandora's Tower. Like those three like big Wii RPGs, like, were all under that thing. People were begging for them. So, and then we got Xenoblade Chronicles with British voice actors, but that's beside the point. Anyways, Smash Brothers really has done a really good job about piquing people's interest on games for characters that are introduced. And then after Ike happened, like, you just got Fire Emblem after Fire Emblem after Fire Emblem in that game. Like, so many characters, especially when Awakening dropped. Like, there's so many in that one. Roy, I believe, isn't even released or translated at all. I think his game is still Japan only.
Wow.
So I think that has something to do with the want for it as being an introduction. I mean, I don't feel like it would have gotten as much visibility if Ike wasn't in Super Smash Brothers. So I think that has a big deal to do with the demand for this game. And then once Fire Emblem Awakening happened, everybody was like, wow, these games are really good. And they just wanted to play all of them. So you kind of started to see the spike from there. As far as price goes, complete a box, you can get it for about $250 to $280, depending on condition. They're going for $200 to $240 range without a manual.
Wow.
I want to say under that, you'd be looking at some disc onlys are going for $200 or less. There was a point in time where it was pushing $300. Couple of them kind of hit it or went over in that cusp, but it's been chilling out a little bit recently from when I looked at it a couple months ago. So I want to say $275 is probably a comfortable number right now for like a nice copy that's complete.
Just don't mind me asking, what'd you pay for yours?
$75. And that was a game I'd been like, I wanted for such a long time because I like Fire Emblem, and I was like, oh, console game? Like, yeah, I need this. That was just a game that I was like, I need this game, and I finally got it.
I feel pretty good about I spent $80, so yeah, I feel pretty good.
That was many years ago, though. It wasn't like it wasn't like last week.
No.
$250 to $280. That's what it's going for right now. So what do you guys think? Is this game worth that price?
Pass it off to someone, or you want to?
Let's go with Brian. Let me hear Brian because Brian doesn't own it.
Yeah. I think $75, $80 that you guys got it all day, right?
I mean, that's always the better option.
Right. No, I mean, it's a really fun game. I think as far as like gameplay wise, there's a ton of replayability. Again, GameCube games, it's the only way to play it, right? Unless you emulate it. So I think as far as you take it as a game and not an item that you're going to sell or whatever, I think it's worth it. It's long. It's lengthy.
It's not if you turn those battle animations off.
Yeah. I definitely got my time with it. I think there is a lot of...
I'm sorry, Brian. I just had to.
Oh, hey, man. It is what it is. It was long because it's the same freaking animations. But no, it's a fun game. I think the story is really good. Like you're saying, the interest with Smash keeps the character in the limelight. And I think the story is super interesting. It made me want to play the sequel. Like, I want to kill this Black Knight because I didn't get to. Yeah. It's been a rough episode for me, huh? But
so many mistakes were made.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Learn it, but you learn. But yeah, the fact that it's a Nintendo property, I mean, most Nintendo stuff ends up retaining value or just going up. I think where it's hovering now is probably where it's going to stay. GameCube games at the time of this recording, kind of wild. I think this is, probably right up there, the top GameCube game that's most desired. Like you're saying, it's not necessarily rare, but as far as desired GameCube games that are exclusive, it's hard to argue this isn't number one, right?
Well, and not even that, but it's like RPG fans.
Right.
You have a very limited GameCube selection as it is.
Yep.
So that's one of the top, if not the top RPG for GameCube in terms of price. Yeah. I mean, maybe Gotcha Force, but I'm not sure if Gotcha Force counts as an RPG.
It's not like
more
an
action
RPG.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's interesting. Yeah, it's a lot of money. Don't get me wrong. And GameCube's not necessarily my cup of tea. But to the right collector, yeah, I mean, this is what you're going to have to pay for this game. And there's no other way to get it unless they end up remastering it or something, which Nintendo does not have a great track record of doing.
You buying a copy for $300?
Not anytime soon, but eventually. I passed on a copy for $285. It's a series I like. It's not a series I love. But, I mean, overall, if you want this game, this is what you're going to pay for it, and this is how you're going to play it. So
are you comfortable with paying that price if that's what it sits at forever, or are you going to try and sit and wait and see if it goes down?
I'll snag it eventually. I'm not really in a hurry.
Regardless of the price? I
mean, yeah, it's a series, like I said, me personally, and then, again, I'm not your financial advisor, guys, so as far as that listens, yeah, that's right. But I don't think it's going to fluctuate much from where the price it's at. I don't think it's going to go super high. It might drop a little bit just because of the times. I mean, it's what you get. You don't really have an option. Like, you pay this price to play this game on the GameCube. That's your option. So, yeah, if you like Fire Emblem, or if this sounds interesting, it sounds fun, I guess it's worth it, huh? Because you don't have a choice.
So it does look like Fire Emblem is the most expensive RPG GameCube title currently. More than Phantasy Star Online.
Wow.
And Pokemon XD and Skies of Arcadia. By a large margin, actually.
Yeah.
I think it being an exclusive, the length of the game, being Nintendo property, like I said, it's not an outlandish price for some of these things, It's got some history behind it being the first 3D one of the series, and they're not going to remake it, let's be honest. Like, I'll eat my words right now. Let's eat this phone script.
No, they're not going to be remaking this one at all.
If you want to play it, this is what you're going to pay for it.
That's the point I want to talk about really quick is, as we record podcasts, we talk about video games often, and remasters are a hot commodity right now. If there's any game out there that deserves a remake / remaster or polish it up some, this game's got to be high in the running. This game could use a remake so damn much.
I think that's fair.
I think cleaning up your battle animations, the story is there. I think gameplay is there overall. This game should be accessible more than it is. Make a remake for Switch and tell me this doesn't sell crap load of units.
I mean, at this point, Fire Emblem, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's Fire Emblem, and I would actually rather see some of the titles not brought over here before a remake of Path
I'll
of
go
Radiance.
for that. I'd rather see.
I mean, there's so
games
many more before it that we didn't get that I'm like, I want these. I mean, we got Shadow Dragon on DS, and then you're like, we're gonna remake it again. And I'm like, why? Why did you? I mean, I guess it was an anniversary thing, and it's like, here's a Fire Emblem, fresh Fire Emblem, like cool. And I'm like, now I got freaking 3 copies of this iteration. Like, I own the Famicom one, so there's so many like Famicom and Super Famicom titles that I would want to hear those stories. I think the 6th Fire Emblem is the one that everyone really, really wants over here, and I think that was the first one that introduced like the companionship system. I could be wrong, don't quote me. But there's a lot of people who are like, we want this one over here, and we're not getting it. So I would rather just them, if they're going to remake something I haven't seen. That's it. Path of Radiance can stay Path of Radiance, but I want to see some new stuff.
Switch digital version so we can get some more accessibility.
I mean, I don't know if they're even able to make a port. I mean, you got to think in that era.
They have GameCube Wise on their service right now because it's not a lot, right?
What do
if
you
any,
mean?
For the Switch Online, does it have any GameCube games right now?
Man, no, they just got 64.
Yeah.
GameCube is lost to the time.
Yeah.
You're going to make a good point. I think
There's
I know what
nothing.
your point was, is that they didn't quite preserve
No.
code and stuff like they do now.
So, and that happened with Final Fantasy X when they did the remaster. They had to build a lot of that back from scratch. I think Final Fantasy VIII, the remaster for that one too, like they didn't have the code anymore. Had to rebuild it.
Silent Hill, HD
Rebuild it, yeah.
Similar thing where it was like, well, we lost half this shit to a fire. We never really worried about
Right.
it. So
And
Or
like
even modern
especially,
times. Sorry, go ahead.
I was like, especially a company who was on the cusp of dying, and they were like, Fire Emblem Awakening is our best, like our last chance.
Yeah.
They're probably not thinking about GameCube.
Mm-mm.
yeah.
So I don't see this ever coming back in another form,
Mm-mm.
especially with Nintendo.
Yep.
But to kind of like steer it back towards collectability, I think that's a huge aspect of this game is probably ain't getting a second chance at this game.
No.
Like you said, even if the remake route or remaster route, like, boy, there's so many games we don't have. Like, those are probably going to get treatment before. So I think Brian touched on most of my points, that you have a Nintendo franchise that's catching fire right now like nothing else. It's quickly ascending to the same pinnacle as your big Nintendo franchises. This game's a hot commodity right now, and this is your first console North American one. That's got a lot going for it. Because if you look at the other Nintendo properties, that their first 3D one, they usually have a pretty big built-in. They're not even rare, but they're expensive because people want them. Like Mario 64 is common as dirt, but it's still fairly expensive for what it is because people want that game. I think this has
People
that.
have a lot of nostalgia for that game too.
Yeah. But I think this one, in a way, it kind of gets you in the exclusive club. Like, oh, I was on the Fire Emblem bandwagon because I have this Path of Radiance. I think GameCube is going to stay hot from where it is. I think there's not a great selection of exclusives as far as, especially in this genre, not a whole lot going on. This is a very standout game for this genre. So if like strategy people, I'm not going to say it's like a huge market, but it's definitely like, oh, I want a strategy game. This is one you can point people towards like, hey, this one's a pretty great game. Should pick it up. I don't know if personally I could spend $300 on this game. I enjoyed this game way more than I thought I was going to going into it. It's pretty high on my list of GameCube games overall. I really enjoy playing. I'll play this game again. Like, I'll 100% pull this game off my shelf and play it again. I know that for a fact. So overall, I'm going to say, yeah, even if the 300's steep, but like I'd say it's worth it because you have your Nintendo flag waving with this one. You have Fire Emblem built in. I think this game's not going to lose any. I don't think it's going to sink down to like $80 and you're going to be screwed if you go spend $300 on it. You know, I think it's going to be stay around this price, $250, $300.
Better be clean for $300.
Well, that's kind of a point with GameCube games is they scratch so damn easily.
Oh yeah, those
and
discs are
yeah.
garbage.
Game stores will take them and refurb them in quotations and break them. Like, I feel like this game's going to have a little built-in financial security. If you find a clean one, like, you're going to pay for it.
I mean, okay, so if you think about other than the Fire Emblem Fate Special Edition, this is the most expensive Fire Emblem game in the franchise.
Wow, really?
So $270 for the most expensive game of a super hot franchise right now.
It's not horrible.
Like, frankly, this is the time to probably buy it.
I agree with you.
With like the crazy heat that Three Houses came off of, like people are still kind of obsessed with that one, but it's only going to go up from here. The same idea that happened with Persona. Persona 4 Golden, and then Persona 5 has its problems, but that one just skyrocketed the Persona name into another stratosphere. And so that's what happened with Fire Emblem, and that's why people are going back, gobbling these copies up, because they're like, oh, this is like the GameCube. You have Fire Emblem as a prestige name. You have the GameCube, which is a big nostalgia bubble right now for people who are our age, who are like, all right, I got the 64 games I want, now I'm moving on to the GameCube.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's been ballooning for quite a bit. You've got a pretty historical title in the series in terms of, like, first North American console, first 3D in the series. You've got Ike as an iconic character, not outside of Fire Emblem, but with Super Smash Bros., which has such a reach.
Huge.
Worldwide. Everyone knows Ike. Everyone knows Aether! And, like, that's... Like, you spam that move, like, even if you've never played Fire Emblem, you know who Ike is. If you showed a little kid a picture of Ike, they'd be like, that's that guy in Smash! Be like, yep, that's him. So, like, I can see why this game is this much, and, like, this is not this is not an expensive price for an RPG.
Mm-mm.
By
No.
all means at all. Like, we got PS1 games shooting up the $400 and the $500. Let's not even talk about Tronbon.
Yeah.
You know? So, like, so $300 is pretty comfortable for me to be slapping that on a wish list and being like, yeah, okay.
I probably feel the way I feel because I already own it. But yeah, I think definitely agree with all those points. I think this is definitely worth it.
Like, Fire Emblem's not going to go away.
I think it's only going to get bigger.
Yeah.
The only way it would go away is if they take the dating away, and they know it. So, dating ain't going away. Look, I'm going to push the dating as far as you could date anybody. All these characters, you could date them. It's amazing. Anyways. Sounds like we've all agreed. Fire Emblem is worth it.
Great game. Solid investment. Looks great on the shelf.
Not so much on the screen, huh?
Eh.
Ooh! Oh!
I want to take a quick note that I did dig out a big ol' CRTV to play this.
Oh, you did?
I did.
This is the game I bought my Retro Tink for. Because I was not... I had a $15 upscaler, and I plugged it in, and I said, this looks like hot shit. I'm not doing it.
I kind of knew it would.
Ugh,
So-
it was awful. I'm like, this thing getting blown up on 65 inches. I was like, oh.
My wife was extremely excited. Like, oh, you started cleaning out the garage. I was like, yeah. It was full intentions to get this really nice tube TV I have out in the garage,
Oh my
and so I
God.
could play this. And
Where'd you end up putting that?
loft. Chloe hung out with me in the cat tower next to it while I played this game. Like,
Nice.
I broke my back to play because I didn't really have a chair or anything out there. My stand wasn't very high.
Mm-hmm.
But-
Now, before we all end this, though, I will say, shout out to Ike for being the GOAT. The final level, I literally soloed the level with him. Everybody else, nobody was dying. And it got to a point where there's too many people to pay attention to, and I was like, forget all of you. Took them all off, and I just soloed Ike, and I just let people try to fight him, and he just massacred the shit out of them.
Yeah.
Forget it. Ike, solo, last level. You don't
Yeah.
need anybody else.
Monster.
Disgusting.
Yeah, he was, my best unit, yeah.
You know what? And it's indicative to Ike becoming
Like his daddy.
like his dad, starting off as a weak, horrible shrimp because he sucked in battle, and I had to have Titania protect him constantly because he was just so squishy, and now he's just like soloing entire kingdoms. It's fine. That's the glow up we want. As far as next episode goes, Nate, that's going to be a you.
Yeah, next topic at hand, it gets us its opportunity to talk about a game that Barry and I both have been dying to talk about.
It's just an excuse. Forget the rest of it.
It was 100% excuse to talk about that. There's you know,
That's true. You did confide that into me. You were
I-
like, "Oh, you just picked this so we could talk about this game," and I was like, "All right, that's fine with me."
but the overall topic is bad games that we enjoyed. So we each picked 3. Well, Barry and I have a shared pick, and discussed those at length of, you know, maybe why they weren't so well received, but what we actually found and enjoyed with them. So pretty excited. All 3 of us are big enjoyers of shitty games that are actually good. So really excited to share that one with you guys.
That's all for today. Check us out on our next episode when that comes up in 2 weeks. Bad games we enjoyed. In the meantime, you can check us out on social media, including TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. I do believe maybe by the time this comes out, we might start streaming on Twitch. Something we're looking into, just to do kind of like mini excerpts of things and whatnot. You know, maybe finally get that footage of Brian's feet. I don't know yet.
Hey man, that's only for the patrons, right?
Only the Patreons get the feet pics for the Patreon we don't have, but if you're curious if we're actually streaming, just go to one of the social media at Collecti-Bros Pod, because we'll probably post if we're doing it or if we have done it. If you don't see anything, it may not be quite ready, but hopefully by the time this comes out it should be, so
We're working on it.
we're working on it.
There's some,
We're working out some kinks in
Some
the
technical difficulties.
Yeah,
difficulties.
yeah.
Difficulties.
I'm not-
Difficulties.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with streaming quite yet, so this is a chore, but
Look, as long as I can play my fishing games and go, shh, you're scaring the fish. To every single person that comes in, we good.
oh, into the chat.
Yep. Shh. Play Dangerous Hunts 2009.
You see him leave the chat instantly.
Thank you. You're scaring the fish.
But yeah, until next time, thanks for listening. Have an amazing day.
Thank you. Go play Fire Emblem.
Good
Bye,
luck.
guys. Thank you.
Play Fire Emblem. Good luck on the hunt. Hope you find some good hauls. Bye bye. All right, we doing a Marry Fuck Kill Path of Radiance characters, the whole cast, playable and non-playable. Brian, you go first.
I gotta go back to my list. I got all these pictures of Spike I'm going through.
Oh my god.
Oh.
Got sidetracked.
Do you have a list?
What's this?
No, like already made.
No.
Damn, you just make him go last.
Yeah.
He's not have a list printed out.
Homie.
He got really distracted by Spike.
Look,
Ugh.
a lot of my companions died anyway. So.
Oh no. Alright. Nate, you go first.
Yeah, I'll take this. I'm gonna marry. Is it Titania? How the hell do you pronounce it?
Titania.
I'm gonna marry Titania because, like, big, powerful, beautiful, loyal, with knight personality. Like, she's gonna stick by your side. She's gonna take care of business when shit goes down. Like, you can count on her to, free horse. Like, you can ride around on horseback and have a great little life together. My fucking choice is probably pretty obvious. Petronine? Is that how you pronounce it?
I think it's Petrine.
Petrine, you getting, the business. Pretty sure it's going to be a universal selection here.
I don't know. Brian's a wild card over there.
I'm always over here looking up the next episode's
similar.
topic. I'm killing Rolf. Annoying.
You're killing Rolf?
Go away.
Dang.
Like one of the...
Dang.
gotta go. Sorry.
Dang.
See ya.
All right, Brian, you got your list now?
Yeah, I'm doing my kill. But it's pretty similar.
Brian let them all die, so, it's hard to...
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got a small list to choose from.
Mary Tatiana, same reasons, man. She's awesome. She was my main. I used her more than anybody other than Ike towards the end. But we spent a lot of time together, a lot of that battle animation that I didn't turn off. Petrine, fucking, just most dark, mysterious, interesting, whatever. But killing Oliver, how could you not kill Oliver? Like, the moment you see that guy, I'm like, I want this fucking guy to die. Like, the moment. You're like, he's a piece of shit.
Oliver?
Treats people horrible. Yeah, the fat dude in the dungeon that kidnapped his mom.
Oh.
I didn't remember. I don't look at his name. I'm horrible with names.
Yeah.
But like,
I
as soon as I
forgot
saw
about
him, I'm
him.
like, man,
Companions,
fuck
but
him.
like, yeah.
Like, he's a piece of shit.
I mean, he got his upcomings.
He got his
did.
comeuppance, yeah.
He did.
Yep. His do-uppance.
Deserved
He got
it.
battle animationed.
Was that it?
Yeah, how about you, Barry?
All right, so I'm going to marry Malrim. I believe that's his name. Also my favorite character in this one.
Good character.
He's the green tiger guy.
Mhm.
Great looking dude. I'm like, ooh. First time he came on my screen, I said, ooh, who's that?
The
I want
wild
you on my
side.
team. Constant tiger mode, okay. Bone and Petrine. Obvious choice.
Obvious choice.
Like, it was that or Titania, and I was like, nah, step on me. Poke me with the lance. It's fine. And then I'm gonna kill Devden. I believe that's what his name was. I'm not sure if you guys got him.
I had him.
Which character is it? Too many names to remember, bro. Hang on.
He looks like this. Did you get him?
Tell me about him. Tell me about him.
I don't remember, like...
He was
kind of a later character. Yeah. He was one that joined your group as, like, a master class character. But, like, he was just so boring in his speech. I was just like...
Die.
He's just trying too hard to, like, try and fit in. And he was a weird... He was not an addition to the group that made sense to me, and I was just like, get out of here. I don't, whatever. You're really annoying me. I'm never using you. Goodbye. So.
Should have put him on my save. I would have got rid of his ass for you.
I mean.
Talk in third person.
Yeah, he's weird.
He's weird just to be weird, kind of, and. Yeah.
He's odd. I wasn't a fan. If it wasn't him, it was going to be Largo.
If he was your coworker, he'd be like, please get fired.
Shut up, yeah.
He does like the pranks and stuff. And yeah, no, he's got to go.
I just found his character extremely annoying, and I was like, please, I don't want anything to do with having to know you anymore, because I do not want to hear your dialogue, so Devon's getting killed.
See ya.
Largo was the second. Did you get him?
Patrindo. Making an amiibo dough. They won't, but...
They won't.
Good time, guys. How long was that?
2 hours.
Felt longer.
A lot of meat.
Like you got a lot of meat in that one.
Well, we also just did like 2 Marry Fuck Kills.
Yeah, I got this guy.
Okay. He was stereotypical berserker, and I'm like...
Like, he wasn't as deep as the other characters, but I mean, like...
He was a very late addition, so you didn't get to know.
Yeah.
Like,
I used him a couple times.
He was weak as shit, too.
Yeah, well, some of them are fodder.